State Football gets a big signing in the transfer portal. Puns intended. I'm Thomas Frank Carr, Sean Fitz, Blue White Illustrated, publisher, recruiting insider, Penn State Football insider. He does all of it, and he's here to talk about the latest addition to the Nittany Lions. The portal's been open a week, and they finally get their first player. So, Fitz, who are we talking about today?
You went with the big pun. I thought you were going to go with the shorter pun from Shorter University in Georgia. Alan Herron, offensive tackle, guy we've been talking about for a couple of weeks here on the Blue White Illustrated show. It's a guy that Penn State targeted from the Division II ranks. He went into the portal in November, picked up a bunch of offers at one time. Clemson came through the same day. Auburn came through. So some big time interest for Alan Herron. He was on campus this weekend, made it official on Monday, committed to the Nittany Lions, the first transfer portal pickup for James Franklin this offseason.
Yeah, and coming after the first official visit weekend, so some good news out of that initial salvo. A lot of things now are a little bit more known about that tackle position because coming in this December signing period, big addition. I was looking through this, Fitz, and I don't know if you know this off the top of your head. The last 3 years, at least, going back to 2021, Penn State has not picked up an offensive tackle in the portal. So not only is this an addition at a rare position for them as a team that's been looking for one each year.
It's so hard to pick up a transfer portal tackle because, number one, you get one of those guys that's ready to start right away, he's going to be expensive. I mean, like, everybody's going to be after him. We saw it with Ajani Cornelius last year that ended up at Oregon. On the flip side, you're going to take a guy maybe like a little bit more like Alan Herron, who's got some time left to develop, 3 years left to play too. He's basically a junior college player in terms of like what you're thinking from a scheduling standpoint, from how this is going to work out from a scholarship perspective. I don't know if he's going to be able to redshirt, going to be set to redshirt in 2024, but he has that availability there. It's kind of like JB Nelson, although Nelson was 4 for 3. Herron is 3 for 2. So it's an interesting proposition here because you look at what Penn State's got coming back in the spring, and Herron plans on being here for spring practice. You've got Drew Shelton coming back for sure. You've got Javen Williams coming back for sure. Chimney Ono. There's not a ton of experience there. So unless Penn State can make something else happen with retaining players, with getting another guy out of the transfer portal, there's we'll call it opportunity. There's quite a bit of opportunity there.
Yeah, this is a guy who I want to get his background here because it's super interesting. But before we get there, one thing I noticed is watching some of his film from early on this past season in 2023. Very raw prospect, but as you can see here on his highlight film, watching on the YouTube channel, I feel like he developed pretty quickly. Like, this is a guy who it seems like he's young to football, and a lot of that development this past season showing up here in his highlight tape. Obviously, it's a highlight tape, but there's some things here that he was not doing early in the year based on what we saw in the Week 1 film that he's doing here in this highlight film. So what is his background, Fitz?
Well, he's originally from Jamaica. He played high school ball in the Atlanta area and ended up at Shorter, playing 2 years there. I believe he started 11 games this season. I believe 22 games in his career at Shorter, and then decided he wanted to go into the portal. Like I said, big time interest. I mean, this was not a guy that's just like, hey, who is this guy? I mean, Clemson came through with an offer. Auburn, he went to Texas Tech for an official visit. They've been quite active in the portal so far. So there's been a lot of interest there. And again, offensive tackle. I mean, it's not a situation where you're bringing a guy in and you're saying, I know exactly what this guy is going to be. There's a lot of projection here, even 2 years into his college career. But if you look at what he brings to the table, he plays on the left, plays on the right in his highlight video. And I think you nailed it. You can tell where he's at in his season by watching his feet, by watching the way that he handles things. He seems like he learned on the fly last season, and he did a pretty good job. And people that I've spoken to outside of Penn State, outside of this whole realm, say there's a lot of potential there. Like there's a draftable potential there. Still got to bring some of that together. 6'5", 310. He's got decent length numbers. He's not overly freakishly long or anything like that, but a lot to work with there. It's going to be very interesting to see where he pops up on the strength scale, because that's really going to be one of those things that determines where he's at. You look at the guys that Penn State has gotten from Lackawanna, and it's just such a big jump. Like, you can't explain how big of a jump it is, even if you've got raw strength, to go into a college strength program, to assimilate into that program. And you kind of would have to think the same thing for a Division II program. No disrespect to where he's been from, but it's going to be a whole new ball game for Alan Herron in the Big Ten.
Yeah, those are a couple of things that I thought was interesting watching him on film. He looks like the classic Penn State offensive line pickup where 6'5", you mentioned 310, not overly long. So he could play guard, he could play tackle, depends on where he fits on his timeline from a physical standpoint, and I think that's really going to be the interesting thing. The good thing I'd say, Fitz, is he does not seem to carry a ton of extra weight. I think he can obviously get stronger. The Penn State weight program is going to do some good things with his potential here, but not a guy that they have to. It doesn't look like a guy they're going to have to rebuild at the when he comes in. I believe you mentioned he's going to be an early enrollee. Is that correct?
Yes, he's going to be here in January. I think there's probably some reshaping I mean, it's just natural, right? Like you
Yeah.
come in from a Division II program, you're going to have to figure it out. Even Hunter Norzad, when he got here from an Ivy League program, really, really strong guy, but it's technique. It's a lot of different things. It's the advanced nutrition. It's all the things that make Penn State's strength and conditioning nutrition program, all that off-field stuff. It's what makes it, among the better ones in the Big Ten. So that's going to be such a big jump for him when he gets here in January. Of course, completely new digs in terms of being up north and things like that. So it's going to be an adjustment. It'll be an interesting spring for him. I'm very fascinated to see which direction they go because they're still looking at offensive linemen in the portal, maybe guys that can go right away, that you feel a little bit more confident they can go right away.
Yeah.
And as we've seen with transfers in the last couple of years, you're not quite sure what you're getting until they're on campus. So don't want to sit out here and say he's going to be an All-American, but there are tools to work with for him at the next level.
Yeah, for sure. I think the comparison I would say is like JB Nelson had a road to go in order to get to Penn State and had to do a lot of things before he could start building. And I guess I don't see that necessarily with Herron, but there's always the transition from that D2 level like you outlined exactly. And then the next thing is he's listed as a tackle in the portal, 12th overall tackle in the portal according to On3. So Penn State, obviously, they need this position. Just running down the guys who are available for the spring that we know of for sure, not the guys that are kind of up in the air. The list, I think he has a shot to participate next year, I guess, is where I'm driving at. What are your thoughts on what's coming back for Penn State that's kind of in more concrete area as opposed to some of the guys that have the option to do something different?
Yeah, I mean, I think Phil Troutwine's done a really nice job, and I think he's got a big job ahead of him because they have to figure it out
Yeah.
full-time guys. Like it was one thing when you could work in Drew Shelton as a third tackle and figure out what you were going to do 3, 4, 5 going down there because you had Olu, you had Caedan Wallace, and you felt really good about where you stood with those guys. But beyond that, you're going to have to break in starters, which on one hand is why I think it's open for players to come in from the transfer portal at this position and say, hey, they've got 2 starting spots open. This is an easier path than some other places. And on the other hand, you're going to have to build those guys up because this is an offensive line that even if you do get a few of those names back, is still going to have to replace maybe the best offensive tackle in the program history. So, just those little things like that.
I mean, you've got a great option in Drew Shelton. You're still having to replace Olu Fashanu, that's a thing. That's going to be an interesting thing to see how Penn State reshapes their offensive line. But some good things I saw, just, quite quickly spitting this out from just Alan Herron to kind of the offensive line and situation he's walking into. Anthony Donko, I thought, looked really good at the end of the season. Definitely progressed shockingly from where he was in high school throughout this 2023 full calendar year. And, of course, Javen Williams, another guy who, coming from a very specific high school offensive system, looked pretty good there at the end. Michigan State, sure, but when you get those flashes of these guys late in the game, the little breadcrumbs we got, they looked like they definitely took a step forward. So it'll be very fascinating to see how all of that shakes out with the offensive line going forward into the 2024 spring. So I guess last thoughts here that you have about the offensive line, Alan Herron, and where we go from here.
And with the new offensive coordinator, building on what you're saying, you're going to have an opportunity to figure out that scheme, and the guys that were ahead maybe come back a little bit, and the guys that aren't here yet kind of start at square one. So you're really not losing a ton in terms of like that sort of development. But I think they're going to continue to look there. Of course, receiver is going to be a spot where they're going to continue to look in the portal. Andre Green was on campus this weekend from North Carolina. That's a guy that they've targeted for a long time. Beyond that, you're still looking at the offensive line. You're always looking at defensive line. You're looking at corner, and then of course kicker as well. The Riley Thompson thing coming back, which is something we talked about on Blue White Illustrated for the last couple of weeks. There, we expected him back, but to get 2 more years out of him, pretty good deal because he's a guy that really came on as the season came about. So building back, I guess you could say. You're not going to have Chop Robinson. Obviously, you're not going to have Theo Johnson, guys that have already declared. But you're working through those little things right now and seeing what you're going to have on campus for the spring semester, and then it's time to roll.
I always do this at the end of the video because I'm so excited to get everybody the information. But if you want to know more, you want to be plugged in, bluewhiteillustrated.com is a place to do that. Special offer for YouTube peoples. 2 months for $1. Use code PSU1 to get that offer. 2 months for $1 with a promo code PSU1. And of course, if you're watching this video, you're learning about Alan Herron. You're learning about the Penn State offensive line for 2024. Like the video. Subscribe to Blue White Illustrated here on YouTube as well. For Sean Fitz, I'm Thomas Frank Carr. We'll be back with more Penn State football breaking news when it happens here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel.